Judge Marcus Thorne's courtroom is a kingdom carved from dark wood and fear. The walls, paneled in mahogany that has soaked in a century of despair, seem to lean inward, pressing the air from the lungs of the accused. The light from the tall, arched windows is always thin, as if the sun itself is afraid to enter without permission. And at the heart of this kingdom, on a throne of black leather and judicial might, sits the king. Judge Thorne is a man built from the granite of his own certainty. His face is a collection of harsh angles and deep-set eyes that hold no warmth, only judgment. His robe is not merely black, it is a void, an absence of light that seems to draw the color from the very room. He wears his arrogance not like a suit, but like a second skin, one he was born into and has never once considered shedding. His voice, a booming baritone accustomed to being the only one that matters, echoes with the finality of a closing tomb. Today, his gaze falls upon the two figures standing before his bench, and a familiar, satisfying sneer tugs at the corner of his mouth. They are exactly the kind of people he enjoys breaking. There is the boy, Jamal Reed. He is young, barely out of his teens, with the terrified eyes of a fawn caught in the glare of oncoming headlights. He wears a suit that is clearly borrowed, the shoulders too wide, the sleeves too short, a pathetic attempt at respectability that the judge finds insulting in its inadequacy. Beside him stands his grandmother, Evelyn Reed. She is a woman in her late 70s, her body made frail by the years, but her spine held ramrod straight. Her hair is a crown of silver, and her skin, the color of rich earth, is a map of a life lived with hardship and grace. She holds a worn handbag in her gloved hands, a relic from another era, a symbol of a quiet dignity that Thorne immediately registers as a challenge. Between them, a nervous tremor in a cheap suit, is the public defender, Sarah Jenkins. She is young, overwhelmed, her briefcase overflowing with files that represent 100 other hopeless cases just like this one. She is a gnat in the judge's ecosystem, an annoyance to be swatted away. "Let us proceed," Thorne booms, the words rolling off the bench like boulders. The case of the state versus Jamal Reed. Charges: reckless driving, resisting arrest, assault on a police officer. The charges are a fiction, a grotesque inflation of a simple, disputed traffic stop. Jamal had been pulled over for a broken taillight he swears was working. Officer Miller, a man with a reputation as a blunt instrument for the city's elite, claimed the boy became belligerent. A scuffle, a torn uniform, and suddenly a college kid with a perfect record is facing felony charges that could shatter his future. Sarah Jenkins clears her throat, her voice barely a whisper in the cavernous room. "Your Honor, we have a motion to dismiss based on inconsistencies in Officer Miller's report." Thorne does not even look at the papers she offers. He waves a dismissive hand, a king brushing away a peasant's petition. Motion denied. Do not waste the court's time with frivolous paperwork, counselor. It is unbecoming. He looks at Jamal, a predator enjoying the fear of his prey. Your client looks like a thug. The ill-fitting suit does not fool me. It screams guilt. Jamal flinches as if struck. Evelyn places a steadying hand on his arm, her touch a silent anchor in a turbulent sea. Her eyes meet the judge's. They are not filled with fear or pleading, but with a calm, appraising stillness. It infuriates him. "And you," Thorne says, his voice dropping to a low, menacing growl, his focus shifting entirely to the old woman. "You will stand when addressing this court. All of you. But you, especially." Sarah Jenkins starts to speak. "Your Honor, my client's grandmother is nearly 80 years old. It is a long proceeding. Perhaps an exception." "An exception?" Thorne laughs, a harsh, ugly sound. "Respect is not an exception in my courtroom, counselor. It is the rule." She will stand. She will stand and show the proper deference to the law her grandson so flagrantly disdains. He leans forward, his eyes pinning Evelyn in place. "Do you understand me, old woman?" Evelyn Reed does not answer. She simply straightens her back a little more, her chin lifting a fraction of an inch. It is a silent act of defiance, more powerful than any shouted word. And for Judge Marcus Thorne, it is the beginning of a war he has no idea he is about to lose. The air in the courtroom grows thick, heavy with the unspoken threat. The bailiff, a mountain of a man named Corman whose loyalty to Thorne is absolute, takes a half step toward Evelyn. His presence is a physical punctuation to the judge's command. "Let the record show," Thorne dictates to the court reporter, a woman who types without ever looking up, that the defendant's family displays a contemptuous attitude. It will be taken into consideration during sentencing. Sarah Jenkins blanches. Your Honor, that is an unfair characterization. She has done nothing. She has done nothing, Thorne mimics in a high, mocking tone. Her presence here is an affront. Her silence is an insult. She will stand for the duration of these proceedings. Is that clear, Counselor, or do you require a formal lesson in courtroom etiquette? Perhaps a weekend in a holding cell would clarify your understanding. The threat hangs in the air, potent and real. Sarah shrinks back, her face pale. She has a family. A mortgage. She cannot afford to be a martyr today. She looks at Evelyn with apologetic eyes. Evelyn gives a small, almost imperceptible nod, releasing the young lawyer from her duty. This is not a battle Sarah can fight. So Evelyn stands. The clock on the wall, a great, merciless circle of Roman numerals, begins its slow, torturous crawl. Tick. Tock. Each tick is a drop of acid on her aging joints. Each tock is a hammer blow against her endurance. Thorne begins the proceedings with excruciating slowness. He calls for a recess to review a file that is already on his desk. He takes a long, deliberate phone call, his back to the court, his voice a low murmur. He adjusts his robes, sips his water, shuffles his papers. Every action is a performance. Every moment is designed to stretch the time, to turn the courtroom into a torture chamber for one old woman. An hour passes. Evelyn's feet begin to burn. A dull ache starts in the small of her back, a familiar pain that now feels sharp and insistent. She shifts her weight from one foot to the other, a tiny movement that does not go unnoticed. Stillness, madam, Thorne snaps without looking up from his papers. Show some decorum. She stills, her body rigid. She focuses on her grandson. On his face, a mask of anguish and fury. He wants to scream, to lash out, but he knows it would only make things worse. He catches her eye, his expression a silent apology. She gives him the faintest of smiles. I am all right, the smile says. Be strong. 2 hours. The ache in her back has become a fire. Her knees tremble, a faint, uncontrollable vibration. She feels a bead of sweat trace a path down her temple. The gallery, sparsely populated with a few other defendants and their families, watches in a mixture of pity and fear. This is what happens when you cross the king. Thorne calls Officer Miller to the stand. Miller is a man whose swagger is too big for his uniform. He has a thick neck and small, porcine eyes. He recounts his version of events, a well-rehearsed narrative of a belligerent young man who posed a direct threat. His voice is confident, oiled by the certainty that he will be believed. He is the law. The boy is the criminal. The equation is simple. Sarah Jenkins begins her cross-examination, her voice shaky but determined. Officer Miller, your report states that you witnessed my client swerving recklessly. Yet there were no other witnesses on that street. It was late, Miller grunts. And your dashcam was malfunctioning. Technical glitch. Happens all the time. For every question, he has a slick, dismissive answer. Thorne leans back in his chair, a pleased smirk on his face. He is enjoying the show. He is the director, the producer, and the star. He glances at Evelyn. He can see the strain on her face now. The mask of calm is beginning to crack. Her knuckles are white where she grips the back of the chair in front of her for balance. Good. Let her break. Let them all see what happens when you bring your quiet insolence into his kingdom. He decides to raise the stakes. He interrupts Sarah's questioning. That is enough, Counselor. Your attempts to impugn the character of a decorated police officer are noted, and frankly, pathetic. He turns his attention to Jamal. Look at your grandmother, son, he says, his voice dripping with false sympathy. She is in pain. Because of you. Because of your arrogance and your refusal to accept responsibility. Jamal's fists clench. I did not do anything wrong. Silence. Thorne roars, the sound making the very air vibrate. You speak when spoken to. He softens his tone again, a cat toying with a mouse. But there is a way out of this. For her. For you. A guilty plea. Right now. Plead guilty to resisting arrest, and I will drop the assault charge. I might even be lenient. 5 years. Maybe less, for good behavior. Think of it, boy. 5 years, and your grandmother can sit down. She can go home. It is a cruel, venomous offer. A confession in exchange for mercy that will never come. Jamal looks at his grandmother, his eyes pleading. He would do anything for her. Evelyn sees the conflict in his eyes. She sees him about to sacrifice his future for her comfort. She shakes her head. A small, firm, resolute shake. No. The single, silent word hangs in the air between them, a shield against the judge's poison. Jamal turns back to the judge, his young face hardening with a resolve borrowed from his grandmother. I am innocent. Thorne's face darkens. The refusal, the continued defiance, it is more than he can tolerate. He has offered them a gilded cage, and they have spat on it. This is no longer about the law. This is about power. This is about breaking the unbroken. He leans into the microphone, his voice a low, hateful whisper that carries to every corner of the room. So be it. 3 hours. The world for Evelyn Reed has shrunk to the space she occupies. It is a column of pain that begins in the soles of her feet and ends in a hot throb at the base of her skull. Her knees are screaming. They feel swollen, filled with ground glass. She dares not lock them, for fear she will not be able to unlock them again. She dares not bend them, for fear they will buckle. So she stands, balanced on a razor's edge of agony. Her vision begins to swim at the edges. The stern face of the judge blurs into a pale smudge. The dark wood of the walls seems to ripple and wave. She focuses on the sound of her own breathing. In. Out. A slow, steady rhythm against the frantic pounding of her heart. She has known hardship. She has buried a husband, worked 2 jobs to raise a son on her own, faced down racism that was far more overt, if no less cruel, than this. She is a survivor. But this is a different kind of cruelty. It is intimate. It is personal. It is a spectacle designed for an audience of one, the men on the bench. Judge Thorne is watching her, his eyes narrowed. He is waiting for the tremor to become a fall. He is waiting for the gasp of pain, the cry for mercy. He is waiting for her to collapse, to be carried from his courtroom a broken woman, a testament to his absolute power. But she does not break. And her refusal to give him that satisfaction is a raw, gaping wound in his pride. He looks from her stoic, pain-etched face to the furious, helpless face of her grandson. And he decides to twist the knife. He decides to cross the line from which there is no return. He clears his throat, a theatrical sound that commands immediate silence. You know, he says, addressing the room but looking directly at Evelyn, it is a sad thing to see a family's legacy curdle. To see the rot pass from one generation to the next. Sarah Jenkins stands. Objection, Your Honor. This is entirely irrelevant and prejudicial. Overruled, Counselor. I am making a philosophical observation. Thorne's smile is a thin, bloodless gash. Sit down before I have you removed. Sarah sits, defeated. Thorne continues, his voice dripping with condescension. Some people just do not know their place. They are born into a certain station, and instead of accepting it with humility, they get ideas. They think they can be something they are not. He pauses, letting the venom soak in. You stand there, old woman, he says, his voice now a lash, and you think about the failure you raised. The apple doesn't fall far from the rotten tree. You raised a son who raised a son just like him. A line of thugs and malcontents who think the rules do not apply to them. A collective gasp ripples through the gallery. This is no longer a judicial proceeding. This is a lynching by monologue. He has attacked her family. Her son. Her entire life's work. And in that moment, something inside Evelyn Reed shifts. The pain does not vanish. It is still there, a roaring fire in her limbs. But it is suddenly secondary. A new feeling rises to take its place. It is cold. It is hard. It is the icy calm of a woman who has just watched her enemy make a fatal mistake. The weariness in her eyes is replaced by something else. A glint of polished steel. She straightens her back, and this time, it is not an act of endurance. It is an act of preparation. Her breathing evens out. The slight tremble in her hand ceases. She is no longer just a victim. She is a witness. And the man on the bench has just finished delivering his own indictment. He mistakes her sudden stillness for defeat. He thinks he has finally broken her spirit. The fool. He has just armed it. The judge savors the silence, the thick, palpable shock that fills the room. He believes it is a silence of submission, of awe at his power. He leans back, ready to deliver his verdict, ready to hammer the final nail into the coffin of Jamal Reed's future. Given the defendant's clear lack of remorse, and the contempt shown by his boom. The sound is not a gavel. It is the sound of the great oak doors at the back of the courtroom being thrown open with such force that they slam against the walls. Every head snaps around. 2 state troopers stand in the doorway, their uniforms crisp, their faces impassive granite. They are flanking a man. A tall man in a perfectly tailored dark blue suit. He moves with an aura of quiet, unshakable authority that makes Judge Thorne's performative power seem cheap and brittle by comparison. The air in the room changes instantly. The oppressive heat of Thorne's tyranny is replaced by a sudden, chilling draft of real power. The man walks down the central aisle, his polished shoes making no sound on the worn linoleum. His eyes are fixed on one person, and one person only. Evelyn Reed. Judge Thorne squints, his brain struggling to process this intrusion. What is the meaning of this? This is a closed session. I am judge. The man does not even glance at him. He walks past the bar, past the defense table, and stops directly in front of the elderly woman who has been standing for nearly 4 hours. He reaches out and gently takes her arm. His voice is low, filled with a concern that is laced with cold, deadly fury. "Mom," he says. "Are you all right? Why are you standing?" The word hangs in the air. Mom. The courtroom, which had been murmuring with confusion, falls into a silence so profound it is like a physical blow. Jaws drop. Eyes widen. Sarah Jenkins looks from Evelyn to the men, her mind making a connection that seems impossible. Jamal looks at his uncle, relief and vindication washing over his face. And Judge Marcus Thorne stares, his face a mask of disbelief. He knows that face. Every person in the state knows that face. It is on billboards. It is on television every night. It is the face of Governor David Reed. The blood drains from Thorne's face, leaving behind a pasty, sickly gray. The sneer, the arrogance, the absolute certainty, it all evaporates in an instant, replaced by the dawning, panicked horror of a man who has just realized he has been gleefully dancing on a landmine. He stammers, his booming voice reduced to a pathetic croak. "Gee, Governor. Governor Reed. What is the meaning of this intrusion?" Governor Reed finally turns to look at the judge. His eyes are not the warm, political eyes from the campaign posters. They are chips of ice. "That is what I am here to find out, Judge," the governor says, his voice dangerously calm. "I believe the proper term is Your Honor, but honor seems to be in short supply in this room today." He helps his mother into Sarah Jenkins's chair, his movements gentle and deliberate. "You forced an elderly woman, a citizen of this state, my mother, to stand for hours in your court. I want to know why." Thorne's mind races, desperately searching for an escape route, a justification, a lie that will hold. It is a matter of courtroom decorum, Governor. Respect for the bench. Respect. The governor's laugh is a short, sharp, humorless sound. "You will lecture me on respect while you abuse a 78-year-old woman over a traffic stop. I think your definition of the word is flawed, Judge. I think your definition of justice is a disease." An aide, a sharp-faced woman in a severe pantsuit, steps forward. She was standing silently by the door, but now she moves with the swift efficiency of a predator. She holds up a tablet. "Governor, if I may," she says, her voice crisp and clear. "Proceed, Maria." "Judge Thorne," Maria says, her eyes locking onto him like a targeting system. "We took the liberty of looking into this case when my office was alerted to a potential irregularity. This is highly irregular. You have no jurisdiction." Thorne begins to bluster, trying to regain some semblance of control. "The governor's office has oversight over the Judicial Conduct Commission, Judge." "I would say we have all the jurisdiction we need," Maria cuts him off coldly. Now, As I was saying. Officer Miller's report. Full of inconsistencies. She taps the screen. Here are the GPS logs from Officer Miller's patrol car. At the time of the alleged reckless driving, he was nearly 2 miles away, finishing a coffee at a donut shop. He could not possibly have witnessed what he claimed. A wave of murmurs sweeps the courtroom. Officer Miller, still on the witness stand, turns a shade of white that matches his uniform. We also have his bodycam footage, Maria continues, her voice relentless. The department provided it to us. A very cooperative police chief, once he heard the governor was taking a personal interest. She turns the tablet so the screen faces the judge. A video begins to play. It is grainy, shot from Miller's chest. It shows Jamal's car, pulled over. Jamal is polite, respectful. Is there a problem, officer? Miller's voice is aggressive, confrontational from the start. License and registration. Now. He shines a flashlight in Jamal's eyes. He makes a comment about the car, about the neighborhood. It is a textbook case of escalation. The audio cuts out right here, Maria explains, pausing the video. Right before the alleged assault, but the video continues. We see you, Officer Miller, grabbing my nephew, Mr. Reed, and throwing him against the car for no reason. Funny how that part was left out of your report. Miller looks like he is about to be sick. The prosecutor, a man named Davies who has built his career on the convictions handed to him by Thorne, begins to sweat, his collar suddenly 2 sizes too small. Governor Reed turns his icy gaze on him. Mr. Davies, he says softly. You and I are going to have a long talk. After that, you will have a choice. You can be a co-conspirator in a federal corruption case, or you can be the star witness for the prosecution. I suggest you think very, very carefully about what your future looks like. Davies looks from the governor to Judge Thorne, and the loyalty that had seemed so solid just minutes before crumbles into dust. He is a rat, and the ship is not just sinking, it has been torpedoed. Thorne realizes he is completely, utterly alone. His kingdom is collapsing around him. His composure finally shatters. He grabs his gavel and bangs it furiously on the bench, the sound a frantic, pathetic plea for the authority he no longer has. This is my courtroom, he shrieks, his voice cracking, spittle flying from his lips. I am the law here. You have no right. This is an outrageous abuse of power. Security. Corman. Remove these people from my courtroom. He points a trembling finger at the governor. The bailiff, Corman, looks at the judge. He looks at the 2 impassive state troopers standing by the door. He looks at the governor of the state, who is staring at him with an expression that promises a world of pain if he makes the wrong move. Corman takes 1 step back from the bench. He slowly, deliberately, puts his hands behind his back. He has made his choice. The betrayal is the final blow. Thorne's face contorts into a mask of pure, impotent rage. He is a king with no subjects, a god with no believers. He is just a man in a black robe, screaming into the void. This is not over, he bellows, his voice raw with desperation. I have friends. Powerful friends. You will regret this, Reed. I will have your career. The governor almost smiles. It is a terrifying sight. No, Judge, he says, his voice dropping to a near whisper, yet carrying more weight than all of Thorne's shouting. It is over. You just do not know how over it is. Maria, the governor's aide, steps forward again. Her face is grim, her tone funereal. We were not just looking into the traffic stop, Judge, she says. An anonymous tip led us to look into your finances. Your rulings. A very interesting pattern emerged. She turns her tablet to the large monitors on the courtroom wall, the ones usually reserved for evidence against defendants. An image appears. It is a grainy, black and white security camera photo. It shows the courthouse parking garage. It is timestamped from 7 o'clock that very morning. 2 men are standing by a luxury sedan. One is Judge Marcus Thorne, out of his robes, looking like any other man. The other is a well-known, notoriously ruthless real estate developer named Walter Sterling. In the photo, Sterling is handing Judge Thorne a thick manila envelope. A friendly conversation. Maria asks rhetorically. Or perhaps a business transaction. Luckily, we do not have to guess. She taps the screen. The image is replaced by a video. The same scene. But now there is audio. It is faint, distorted by the garage's acoustics, but a team of state forensic analysts has cleaned it up. It is crystal clear. Sterling's voice, "Just make sure that kid gets put away. A felony conviction, something that sticks. I need him out of the picture." Thorne's voice, "It will be done. Resisting, assault, he will not see the light of day for years. But this needs to be the final payment, Walter. The risk is." Sterling's voice, "Do not worry about the risk, Marcus. Just worry about the result. His family's house is the last one on that block. The last piece holding up my new condo project. Get it done. Get me that property. The property. Evelyn Reed's home. The house she has lived in for 50 years. The house her husband built with his own 2 hands. The motive, stark and ugly and venal, is laid bare for the entire courtroom to see. This was never about a broken tail light. It was never about resisting arrest. It was a conspiracy to steal a home from an old woman by destroying her grandson. A stunned, horrified silence descends. The court reporter has stopped typing, her hands hovering over the keys, her face a mask of shock. The prosecutor, Davies, slumps in his chair as if his spine has dissolved. Thorne stands frozen behind the bench, his mouth agape, his face the color of ash. He looks like a man who has just watched his own ghost walk through the wall. At that moment, 2 new figures enter the courtroom through a side door. They are not in uniform. They wear simple, dark suits that fit perfectly and do nothing to hide the lean, hard strength of the men inside them. They move with a quiet purpose that is more intimidating than any weapon. They have earpieces. They are federal agents. One of them, a woman with sharp, intelligent eyes, walks directly toward the bench. She does not acknowledge the governor or anyone else. She has a single target. She holds up her badge. "Judge Marcus Thorne," she says, her voice calm, professional, and utterly devoid of emotion. "You are under arrest on behalf of the Federal Bureau of Investigation for conspiracy to deprive a citizen of his rights under color of law, bribery, and obstruction of justice." Each charge is a hammer blow, driving the nails deeper into his coffin. The agents walk up the steps to the bench, a space no one but Thorne has occupied for 20 years. His kingdom has been invaded. His throne is being seized. He is speechless, paralyzed by the sheer speed and totality of his destruction. One agent gently takes the gavel from his limp, nerveless hand and sets it down on the bench. The other agent looks him in the eye. "Please stand and remove your robe, sir." The command is polite. It is not a request. Thorne does not move. He cannot. The agent reaches forward and unties the sash of the black robe. With a single, smooth motion, he pulls it from Thorne's shoulders. The robe, the symbol of his power, the void he wrapped himself in, slumps to the floor in a heap. And underneath, he is just a man. A paunchy, sweating, terrified man in an expensive but now hopelessly rumpled suit. The agent produces a pair of handcuffs. The click of the metal ratchets echoes in the silent room. They lead him down from the bench, past the witness stand, through the bar. He is no longer a judge. He is a prisoner in his own courtroom. As they lead him past the defense table, his eyes, wild with disbelief and a venomous, bottomless hatred, lock onto Evelyn Reed. She is still seated, her grandson's hand on her shoulder, her son standing protectively beside her. She looks at him. Her face is not triumphant. It is not gloating. It is calm. And her voice, when she speaks, is not the quavering voice of a frail, old woman. It is clear. It is strong. It rings with the unimpeachable authority of justice itself. "You were right about one thing, Judge," she says, her words a final, cutting epitaph for his career. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. She glances up at her son, the governor, then back at the disgraced men in handcuffs. "I raised my son to clean up messes like you. The fallout is not a storm. It is a cleansing fire. It sweeps through the city's corrupt corridors with breathtaking speed and ferocity, leaving nothing but ash in its wake. The trial of Marcus Thorne is a media sensation, a public autopsy of a diseased system. He is denied bail, deemed a flight risk and a danger to the community he once pretended to serve. Stripped of his tailored suits and his judicial power, he sits at the defendant's table looking small, pathetic, a ghost haunting the memory of his former self. The prosecutor, Davies, testifies against him in exchange for a lesser charge of misprision of a felony. His testimony is a sickening chronicle of years of backroom deals, buried evidence, and justice for sale. He is disbarred, his name becoming a synonym for cowardice in legal circles. He ends up working as a claims adjuster for an insurance company, a fittingly soulless purgatory for a man who sold his own. Officer Miller cracks under federal interrogation. He confesses to the conspiracy, to years of fabricating reports and perjuring himself on Thorne's orders. He is fired from the police force in disgrace and sentenced to 7 years in federal prison for perjury and civil rights violations. He enters the general population, a former cop stripped of his badge and his authority, and learns the hard way what the other side of the bars feels like. The developer, Walter Sterling, tries to fight. He hires a team of high-priced lawyers who argue entrapment, who paint him as a victim of a vengeful governor. It is useless. The video is irrefutable. His own arrogance on the tape damns him. He is convicted of bribery and conspiracy. His company, built on a foundation of intimidation and corruption, collapses under the weight of lawsuits and federal seizure. He is sentenced to 15 years and forced to pay millions in restitution, not just to the city, but directly to a fund for the victims of his predatory practices. And Marcus Thorne, the king of his courtroom kingdom, receives the harshest sentence of all. He is found guilty on all counts. The sentencing judge, a woman he once mentored and later tried to sabotage, looks down at him with cold, disappointed eyes. She speaks of the sacred trust he shattered, the mockery he made of the very idea of justice. She sentences him to 30 years in a maximum security federal prison, with no possibility of parole. His assets are seized, his pension revoked, his name chiseled off the courthouse dedication plaque. He is sent to a facility known for housing the worst of the worst. There, his booming voice and arrogant demeanor mean nothing. He is just another number, an old man who quickly learns that the only currency is fear, and he has nothing left to sell. He dies 11 years later from a heart attack in the prison library, alone and forgotten, a footnote in a story about the day justice came back to his city. The fire that consumes the wicked also illuminates the righteous. All charges against Jamal Reed are immediately and publicly expunged by the state's attorney general, with a formal apology issued on behalf of the state. The story of his ordeal and his grandmother's quiet strength becomes a national symbol of resilience. Governor Reed, using his own funds, establishes a new state scholarship in his mother's name, the Evelyn Reed Justice Scholarship, for underprivileged students wishing to attend law school. Its first recipient is Jamal. He graduates from law school with honors, his passion for justice forged in the crucible of his own persecution. Sarah Jenkins, the overwhelmed public defender, finds her life transformed. Impressed by her tenacity in the face of Thorne's tyranny, the governor offers her a position in the Attorney General's office. She is appointed to head a new statewide task force on judicial oversight and accountability, created in the wake of the scandal. She is given the resources, the power, and the mandate to ensure that no judge like Marcus Thorne can ever hold a gavel in their state again. She becomes a fierce, respected advocate for the powerless, her name synonymous with integrity. The investigation into Thorne's court becomes a full-blown excavation. They unearth 2 decades of corruption. Dozens of wrongful convictions are overturned, freeing men and women who had lost years of their lives to Thorne's malevolent rulings. The Thorne Commission leads to sweeping, systemic reforms. The process for judicial appointments is completely overhauled, with a new emphasis on transparency and public review. A permanent, independent body is established to investigate complaints against judges, with real power to remove them from the bench. The dark, mahogany courtroom where Evelyn Reed was forced to stand is gutted and renovated, its oppressive gloom replaced with bright, modern lighting and light-colored wood. It is rededicated as a hall of justice, a promise to the future that the past will not be repeated. Evelyn Reed herself asks for nothing. She wants no fame, no reward. She simply wants her grandson's name cleared and her home to be safe. She gets both, and so much more. She becomes a quiet hero in her community, a symbol of the immense power of dignity in the face of inhumanity. Her neighbors, who once feared the developer's reach, now greet her with reverence and respect. She spends her days tending her garden, baking for her grandson, and watching her son on the evening news, a quiet pride in her eyes. Her life, once threatened, is now more peaceful and secure than ever before. 2 years later. The light in courtroom 4 is different now. It is warm, inviting. It pours through windows that are immaculately clean, illuminating a space that feels less like a kingdom of judgment and more like a forum for truth. The dark, heavy wood has been replaced with a light, welcoming oak. The seal of the state behind the bench gleams. The judge on that bench is different, too. Judge Anna Morales is a woman of color, her hair streaked with gray, her face etched with wisdom and empathy. She listens patiently to a young man charged with a minor offense, her questions designed not to trap, but to understand. In the back of the courtroom, in the gallery, sits Jamal Reed. He is no longer a terrified boy in a borrowed suit. He is a confident young man on the cusp of his own legal career. He wears a well-fitting suit that he bought himself, and he holds a leather-bound notebook, taking notes. He is observing, learning. Next to him, he is mentoring another young man, one who reminds Jamal of himself 2 years ago, nervous, scared, facing the system alone. Jamal leans over, whispering a word of encouragement, explaining a point of procedure. He is already giving back, already becoming the kind of lawyer the world needs more of. Beside him sits Evelyn Reed. She watches the proceedings with a serene smile. She sees the new judge, the fair process, the hope in the room. She looks at her grandson, no longer a victim but a future champion, and her heart is full. A man slips into the row beside them. He is not wearing the formal suit of a governor, but a simple polo shirt and slacks. He is here not as the state's chief executive, but as a son and an uncle. Governor David Reed puts his arm around his mother's shoulder and gives his nephew a proud nod. They sit together, a family, whole and unbroken, watching justice unfold not as a brutal spectacle, but as a quiet, respectful process. Arrogance is a prison a man builds for himself, brick by brick, with every act of cruelty and every abuse of power. Marcus Thorne built his fortress high, believing its walls were impenetrable. He mistook silence for weakness and dignity for submission. He thought his power made him a king, invincible and absolute. But he learned too late that true power does not reside in a gavel or a black robe. It resides in the unwavering spine of an old woman who refuses to break, in the love of a family that refuses to be shattered, and in the simple, unassailable truth that justice, no matter how long it is forced to stand and wait in the shadows, will one day demand its seat on the bench. And on that day, no kingdom of corruption is safe.